RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I am Raf Diallo, and as I say every week, you know where you can get us. We're on every podcast platform you can think of, and YouTube as well, if you prefer watching as well, and timestamps as well. As I mention every week, they can be found there as well, because most episodes, there's a lot going on, and this week is no different. There's an FAI Cup final to preview. We're also going to be talking about the Ireland under-17s, and also I'll be joined by Rachel Graham a little bit later on, because there's lots happening in the women's game, and she's also going to pick her 11 of under-23 players that she thinks are the best in this country. Now, I am joined by Alan Cawley and Richie Towell. Alan, you're back in the building again. I think it's not that even long ago that you were in here.
No, Raf, yeah, it seems like it's a home from home, but it's not the worst complaint, to be honest with you. But this is very fancy. I like this, Raf, yeah. I'm not used to this kind of
it's
cozy, isn't it?
Yeah, in fairness, I had nothing to do with it. I'm just benefiting
no,
from,
I like
from
it.
all the change.
I'm into the home decor, you know, it looks well.
Fair your football boots over there with the Velcro straps on them.
Now, obviously, you were in yesterday, but the day before was hugely busy because it was the final day of the League of Ireland season, and obviously 450 minutes plus of action, and in the end, Bohemians take fourth place, and Waterford are going into the promotion relegation playoff. And let's start on the Bows Drogheda game, Richie. And like last week, obviously you weren't here last week, but there were doubts cast about Bohemians' ability to go to Drogheda, who they'd lost to 3 times already this season, all by 1-0 margins, and get the results they needed. In the end, they won 4-1, and they're taking a potential European place. Like, just how good a performance was that?
Yeah, it was a good performance from Bohemians. They needed the bounce back, didn't they, from last week? It was a very uncharacteristic performance from Drogheda as well. A lot of sloppy things. Normally, we associate Drogheda being very well organised, really hard to break down, and they don't give away many chances. They were really, really sloppy in the game. Now, I know me and Alan were just speaking about John Mountain. He was very, very lucky to stay on the pitch. He was should have got red carded, and then obviously Thomas, he throws the elbow into Ross Tierney, and he ends up getting the red card. So it's fine margins in football. It is. Raf and Bohemians just seem to get the rub of the green against Drogheda on Saturday. Sorry.
Yeah, the John Mountney non-sending off. Obviously, he got a yellow card, got subbed off before after he did the second tackle on Conor Kane. Should he have even gone for the first one?
100%, Raf. Yeah, it was a straight red in my view. Just my initial reaction, I was in the ground. Now it was over on the far side. I think the only thing that saved him, which shouldn't have saved him really, but the only thing I could think of was the fact that it was so early in the game. I'd say it was less than a minute even. It was one of the first challenges in the match, but he was very late. It was a dangerous tackle. Conor Kane has suffered a couple of bad injuries as well. He's had a broken leg a couple of years back, so this was a really bad one. And I always judge it off the players' reactions, everyone's reactions in the ground. Like, it was a really poor challenge from John. And I thought he would be given it. The only thing, as I said, that saved him was the fact that it was so early, but that shouldn't.
That's poor, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's a red after a minute or 100 minutes, it's a red.
Normally they have a checklist, don't they, the referees? How fast he went into the tackle, is it danger an opponent?
Yeah.
Surely it doesn't matter what time of the game it is, if that ticks all the boxes, he's got to go.
And it did,
away.
Richie. He was so late and he was high, and it was kind of, I thought Conor Kane was in a bit of trouble. To be fair, he got up and played on. He went off later in the game, but it just looked really, really poor. But then to add insult to injury, I suppose, on top of that, 15 minutes later, so he only got a yellow for that. 20 minutes later, then I think it was Conor Kane on the left-hand side again, but he pulls him down. Another late challenge, a stonewall yellow card, and everybody was thinking, well, here he is now. The ref will 100% give him the yellow, and he'll be sent off eventually 20 minutes later. And he lets him away with that one as well. And what does Alan Reynolds do straight away? And they were right in front of us. You could see Niall Moran getting ready straight away. They were like, get him off, because they knew they had gotten away with it, Bohemians. And I suppose the point I'm making there, Raf, is the repercussions it has for Drogheda. That had a huge bearing. It was 0-0 at that stage. Has a huge bearing on the game. You're talking about finishing fourth, potential European place, the money, the rewards, and all that kind of stuff that comes with it. So these decisions have major implications on a club, not just on individuals as well. So I thought the referee, it was really, really poor from him. So Bohemians, obviously they got away with it. But to be fair to Bohemians in the game, they did very, very well, because as Richie said, you're going up to Drogheda. We all know, obviously, tough place to go. There was a raucous atmosphere, to be fair, as there always is. You would have been kind of defending a lot of long balls, corners, throw-ins, and they stood up to everything. James Clark on the day was absolutely fantastic. He played really, really well, James. And there was a couple of mistakes, uncharacteristic, as Richie, again, I'd agree. the goalkeeper, who's been brilliant, to be fair to him. Dennison made a couple of mistakes, and then the lad getting sent off with 20 minutes to go because it was 2-1 at that stage, and Thomas throws the elbow. It was ridiculous. The referee got that one right. It was a straight red, and it was kind of like the fight was gone out of them once they went down to 10 men.
Yeah, and Bohemians fans will be buying green and white scarves now, because if they want to get into Europe, they have to support Shamrock Rovers in the cup final. But in regard to Drogheda, though, obviously, as Alan has outlined there, there are repercussions. We know what happened in terms of the European situation earlier this year, where they thought they were in it, but of course, in the end, that didn't go ahead. And the only thing for them, Kevin Doherty's staying on, and they've signed up a couple of their players on longer term deals. So there is a bit of positivity, even if this season they've fallen short. Yeah,
there's loads of stability in Drogheda, and that's, I think, you look at their counterparts up in Louth now, and you can see the turmoil that they're in. I think Kevin Doherty be massively disappointed. You push so much into a season that comes down to the final game. I'm sure that he was licking his lips thinking, Bohemians at home.
I fancied them strongly myself.
This
I really
is exactly
did.
what we want, and there's a bit between him and Rennie as well, isn't there?
And especially off the back, Richie, of Bohemians' result last week.
Yeah.
Because in the atmosphere was toxic around Daleyman because of Shelbourne getting the late 100%. Goals. So he would have fancied it.
I'd say he was licking his lips thinking, lovely, this is the exact type of game that we would have wanted. And then, as we said, silly decisions by the referee, silly decisions by his own player to get sent off, and then very uncharacteristic, the mistakes that they made. The only thing is, Kevin can look back on the season and think, you know what? From where we were to where we got to, it's a massive improvement. There's a lot to build on there. The club's in a good place. He's signing back. He's after signing a couple of players. He'd be thinking, right, that was just a start. Now it's really, really time to kick on now.
Yeah, and Pats, on the other hand, they were the one in the pound seat, so to speak, in fourth place, but they were going to a tough place in Shelbourne, who were in really, really good form, and they couldn't score, 0-0 draw. I think we mentioned last week here that Pats have been very reliant on the goals of Mason Melia, and if it's not happening for him, it doesn't seem to happen now. That was the last game he's playing for them before he goes off to Spurs. There's a huge challenge here for Stephen Kenny now in terms of trying to rebuild this side without European football.
Yeah, it's bitterly disappointing, Raf, because again, the aspirations for a club like St Patrick's Athletic, with the budget, with Stephen Kenny at the helm, would have been bare minimum to get into Europe. And I know that's not easy, to be fair. You're going up against Shamrock Rovers, Shelbourne, Derry, big clubs as well, but I think that would have been the bare minimum to miss out when it was in their control as well. It's just been too inconsistent all season with Pats, and that's been the problem. We mentioned it a few weeks back after the cup disappointment as well in the semi-final, that when it's put it up to them, they don't stand up and deliver. And it was the same the other day, and even though you're going to an informed team in Shelbourne, obviously, but it's in your control that if you can stand up, do your business, get the win, obviously you would have finished fourth. And that's why I give Bohemians credit, because off the back of the disappointment of last week, it was up to them to stand up to the challenge of Drogheda, and to be fair, they absolutely did, every one of them. But St. Pat's will be majorly disappointed, and you mentioned obviously Mason is going to move on, and good luck to him, and he can hold his head high. That young fella did great all year, to be fair, coming into adult football, if you like, and performing as well as he did. I think he finished on 12 goals as well, was it? 12 or 13, but he's had a brilliant season, so he can hold his head up high. But certainly in terms of the rest of them, I'd say there'd be a few questions asked, and just about rebuilding and budgets and players under contract. I'm not sure how many there is, but I think he has a big job on his hands, Stephen Kenny, there, because that's a huge blow not getting into Europe, because all the other clubs are pushing on as well, Raf, the ones that do get into Europe. Like, I'm so impressed with what Joey O'Brien has done at Shelbourne, and I didn't fancy Pats, I have to be honest. I didn't fancy them at the weekend to go to Shelbourne and get a victory. I really didn't. So I wasn't surprised by that result at all. So yeah, they have a big job on their hands at St Patrick's Athletic.
Yeah, what areas of the squad need the most kind of an overhaul, let's say? Because Barry Murphy said it a few months ago that Pats did need an overhaul. Obviously, it's probably been proven now, given that they've just fallen short of the European places. But when you're looking at that squad, beyond, like, obviously the striker situation, which is obvious with Melia going out the door, where else do they need to look?
I think the big thing for them, they need a mentality shift. They do. Like, I think they're so weak mentally, the whole lot of them. As Alan said, we spoke about St. Pat's before they were going down to play against Cork in the semi-final, and everybody was like, Rovers Pat's final, it's going to be great. And both of us said it on the day. We said, this is not a shoe-in for St. Pat's to go down there, even though Cork were in a really bad position. But you never know what you're going to get with St. Pat's when they turn up. Are you going to get the St. Pat's who turned up against Cork in the semi-final, or are you going to get the St. Pat's who turned up against Shamrock Rovers in Richmond Park? I watched them against Rovers in Richmond. They were brilliant. They were absolutely fantastic on the day. Scored a couple of goals, could have had a couple of more. But like that, they're so inconsistent. They've won 13 games this year. That's absolutely incredible for a team like St. Pat's. they've scored the same amount of goals as Sligo, who were in a relegation battle. It's wild stuff. When you think about like Stephen Kenny's teams, they're always known for this free-flowing football, attacking, scoring loads of goals. It just wasn't there. The likes of Jake Moraney and Zach Elbazetti, they just didn't hit the heights that they did. I think you've seen when Stephen came in at the end of last season, they probably won their last 11 or 12 games, nearly the same amount as they won the whole season this year, which is absolutely crazy. But for me, I would love to see a mentality shift in the players. I'd love to see them sign a couple of winners, a couple of lads who have been there and won league titles, that are going to go into the dressing room and really create a culture. I don't know who's driving the culture at St. Pat's. From the outside, it doesn't look like anybody's driving the culture, because it seems to be every time they go on the pitch, you don't know what you're going to get from them. You look at Shamrock Rovers, straight away, Roberto Lopez, you know he's driving the culture there. He wears the captain's armband. If the chips are down, you can see him rallying them. You can see him getting behind them. You can see him organising. You can hear him a mile away on the football pitch. Every time I see St. Pat's, I don't see that. If someone gives the ball away, people just throw their hands up in the air and it's, someone else will get it back.
Yeah, and I'd even add, I'd add Shelbourne into that as well. They have a bit of, there's a substance to them, there's resilience, there's strong characters. You can get into a physical battle with them and they'll stand up to it, or you can play football and they'll do that. Pats, to me, seems to be it's either the football or nothing. Yeah. And if the football isn't going well and it turns into a bit of a battle or a fight, that's where they're found wanting. And you go through even then, if Stephen wants to focus heavily on obviously the attacking side of things, as Richie says, they haven't scored enough goals. Simon Power, hit and miss. Brandon Kavanagh, these lads that are the creative ones. Jake Mulroney, Elbazetti has missed a bit of football, Keane has missed a bit of football, but those ones who you're kind of dependent on to get you the goals and be creative, they've been found wanting all season.
Yeah, and then Derry City, obviously getting second place, that could turn into a Europa League spot. And like the Bohemians fans, there may be green and white scarves being sold up in Derry now, which is going to be huge for them because they finished the season quite strongly, at least in terms of getting over the line. They were in the same position as Bows just a few weeks ago, and Bows only just got over the line.
No, I've been really impressed with Derry from the second half of the season. I was very, very critical of them at the start of the season when Tiernan Lynch went in. Every time I watched them play, I didn't know whether they were a possession-based team. I didn't know whether they were a team that went long and got second balls. I just couldn't see his philosophy of football in the team. Now they have a clear identity. I think they're doing really well. It was a really, really tough job for Tiernan going in there. It's a massive, massive rebuild. Rudy Higgins was at the being in there for a long, long time. He had a lot of his own players. Obviously, then you had the likes of Patrick McElhenney that was leaving. Some big, big characters in that dressing room. I think Tiernan Lynch has done a really, really good job up there. I think if you had offered him second place at the start of the season, I think he would have snapped your hand off. I know it's probably a bit mad saying that. He probably won't admit that either. But I think if you had offered him that, he would have snapped your hand off. And that's, I know we spoke about Drogheda having something to build on. I really think that Derry have something to build on, especially with the finances that they have up there.
And that's even, Raf, what we're talking about in terms of, like, you're looking at the challenge for Pats and even Bows, the ones that are below them three. Like, Shells have been so impressive since Joey O'Brien. So you're thinking there's good things, plenty more good to come off the back of them. Tiernan Lynch has done very, very well the second part of the season, and they finished really strong. As you said, they're unbeaten in their last 10 league games since the defeat to Shamrock Rovers, and they've won 6 and drawn 4. Now I won't say they're reliant on Duffy, but they've a star in Duffy, as we know. Unbelievable player of the year for me. I love Duffy, and not just his goals, scored again at the weekend, 11 assists on top of all the goals as well. But in terms of what he's done, Tiernan, with some of the new players coming in as well, I think there's good things to come from them and plenty to build on. And obviously Shamrock Rovers. So there's 3 big clubs with lots still to come, where you're talking about Pats and where there's question marks all over the place really. Bohemians just scraping over the line and still not guaranteed Europe. So I think there's a big challenge for those ones below the top 3, if you like. And I would even put Shells ahead of Derry in terms of mounting a challenge next year. I think since Joey O'Brien has come in, like, you look at their home form, they've only picked up, and this is what's cost them really, Raf, you look at their home form, they've picked up 30 points, whereas Shamrock Rovers have picked up 39 points. They've been 5th in the table in terms of the home and away tables, whereas you look away, it's 29, and away for Shamrock Rovers is 27. So that 9-point gap, they've only lost the league by 7 points, Shelbourne. Yeah, that's a big one. Where you'd expect the home form is where obviously all the great teams have good home form, teams that win the league, if you like. So I think coming into next year, that'll be an area where I think And a lot of those games where they probably slipped up a homer in the early part when they were struggling with Damien and stuff. Since Joey's come in, I think the home form's been very strong, and his form in general with the team has been absolutely brilliant. So I think in terms of next year, them three already are in a strong place to kick on again, whereas Pats have a big jump just to get to them and try and kick on.
Joey's done incredible. Yeah. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how he handles the transfer window as well. It's obviously
because they have a strong squad as it is.
Yeah, they have a strong squad, and it's his first transfer window. Obviously, he had Damien, who was overseeing picking all the players, and obviously he would have had some sort of input, but now he's going to be the one that's like, no, this is the player I want, so it's all going to come down onto him. But Joey's done an absolutely fantastic job since
with the European money and the backing that he has there. Like, they can really kind of step it up in terms of the calibre of player that's coming in on top of what's already there. Because I think, like, everybody goes on about the strength and depth with Shamrock Rovers, and rightly so, and the midfield areas, and even when Richie was there, the options, like, it was like for like no matter who was playing. I think Shelbourne's midfield is as strong when you play McKinroy, Henry Francis, JJ Lunny, Harry Wood, Ali Coop. They're as strong as what's at Shamrock Rovers, I think, and he's gone to that box midfield as well, which has been brilliant.
That was the first time I seen any team dominate Shamrock Rovers midfield, was when Lunny, Henry Francis and McEnroy was in the midfield against Rovers and Tallaght. I couldn't believe how much they dominated the game. They were really, really good. If you can keep the three of them fit and in the team together, I think they'll do brilliant next season.
The only little thing with Shelbourne, I think, and again, like Richie said, what they'll do in the off season. And I know Meatball's done okay.
Goal scorer.
Yeah, they need a centre forward. I think a really, real top quality centre forward. You can't. Sean Boyd's always injured. Can't rely on him as well. Does good when he comes on, but he's always injured.
I think most of the teams do, but like, you see, like Patrick Hammond, top goal scorer, 13, 14 goals. Yeah, crazy. I think that's mental that someone's scoring 14 goals and getting top goal scorer. I'm wanting, if I have a top striker, I'm wanting a minimum of 20. Yeah. Minimum of 20 goals.
Like. Well, who are those boys that are getting that now? You know,
like when they're playing in England.
There you go. Yeah.
Number 9s are going out of fashion.
But again,
it seems to be until you look at Hurling Haaland there yesterday, and then you're like, oh,
but that's what I mean, Raf, about like with the European money and the backing that they have. Shelbourne now and in such a strong financial position, they can really step it up in terms of going if it is a lad in England or wherever, that they can really kind of go after a step above what they have.
Yeah, and then Sligo Rovers, speaking of Tallaght, obviously going and getting the win that definitely secured safety. So they're probably thankful that a few days earlier Galway United had succumbed narrowly to Shamrock Rovers.
Absolutely, Ralph, and I was delighted for him because John Russell, like at one stage there in the early part of the season, I think it was 12 points behind Galway, 11 behind Waterford. I had said to you, I think the word I used was grim. Bleak, sorry, there you go. Like, and
they're all as bad as each other earlier.
And that was that April, May time, and it was a real struggle, Ralph. Like, you're looking at them then thinking, but to be fair to John, the lads that got in the mid-season in that window, the young McManus, O'Kane came in, Patrick McLean made a big difference at the back as well and just strengthened things up for them. And even Richie's gone back there about lads who's kind of the leaders of the team. From speaking to people, McLean came in and made a real difference straight away in terms of just being vocal in the dressing room and kind of putting demands on people. So they really stepped it up, and you can't get away from the fact that young Elding's been absolutely amazing like all season. And without him, you would question where it'd be. But I suppose every team needs a star. We mentioned Duffy, and he was absolutely incredible. Scored again at the weekend. Scored the week before the penalty against Cork. I was at that game, and I was thinking this is a real chance missed, because the chances are going to Shamrock Rovers. Now, luckily enough for them, they had the League One, as you say. That's out of Sligo Rovers' control, so that's kind of nothing to do with them. But they had it won. They're obviously playing AAK Athens this week, so he rested a good few in that game as well, which helped. But you still have to go there and win, Raf, and they got the job done. So I think, to be fair to John, and I'm glad for them as well, because by all accounts, like from listening to people, like they lost their best players at the start of the year. John puts a lot. Now, I know all the managers do, but John puts a lot of time and effort into it as well. So to see them get the rewards towards the end of the season, and even the supporters, like there was a big crowd went to Tallaght and all. And you need Sligo Rovers in the Premier Division, more than a Cork City. Big clubs like that, you need those in the division as well. Even just the geographical spread, I think that's important as well.
Yeah, we'll come back to the geographical things. I think it's kind of important, just actually when you look at the breakdown of the table. But Galway United, they are staying up, so that's two teams from Connacht that are staying there now. They were going to Waterford, which was a real head-to-head. And indeed, whoever won that was staying up, and it ended up being a draw, which suited Galway. Stephen Walsh scores early, and then Waterford come back into it. But it probably suits Galway in a certain sense, that kind of digging in and backs to the wall kind of stuff.
Yeah, John Caulfield loves that, doesn't he? And you know what? I'm delighted for John, because not just a hard season on the pitch, I think they had a hard season off the pitch as well with what happened with the death of Ollie, with the death of Ollie Horgan, it was really, really sad for not just the team, but for the people all around Galway. So, but you see them, they are a team that'll dig in, aren't they? Like, I think you see the big difference. Waterford conceded 60 goals. Galway only conceded 44, which is crazy, like, isn't it?
That's the big swing,
that's
really.
That's such a big swing. It is. That's even fair for Waterford now going into the playoff places, into the playoff, because a team that concedes nearly 2 goals a game, that very rarely are going to win a game. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really surprising.
You're not giving yourself a chance in a game.
No chance at all. Where you see Galway, they went through a bad spell in the middle. They've really picked up coming towards the end. I think if they had a goal scorer, the likes of Moses Dwyer, they tried to replace him, but it just didn't materialise. If they had a goal scorer, I think they would have been fine, because when they had him in the team, they were really, really dangerous to wear in transition, because, as we said, they're really, really tight at the back. They don't concede many goals, and he was their goal scorer. He wasn't. Obviously, they were very, very unfortunate to lose him, and they just never managed to replace him.
And coming back now to the geographical point that you were sort of making there, it was just something, when you actually look at the table, it is kind of stark. Other than Derry, and then Drogheda as well, who were sort of on the coattails of that sort of top half, let's say. It's basically the Dublin clubs that are either challenging for the title or they're challenging for the European places. And if you look at the relegation battle, it was all sort of like the rest of the country. Obviously, Sligo Rovers at times have challenged in, maybe if we go back 10 years ago, Dundalk had that golden period as well, where they were winning titles. And then, Cork City, it seems to be once a decade they come along, and then in between that, they're sort of either yo-yoing or whatever. But when you look at the table now, and obviously you can read too much into one season, but is there a bit of a concern that there is that sort of Dublin clubs here and plus Derry, and then sort of like the rest?
Yeah, it has to be a concern, but I think that's just kind of the landscape of the league, and it's been like that for years and years, as long as I've been playing it. Obviously, Dublin's the capital, the big clubs here, and just in terms of the resources at their disposal, everybody points to the fact that, as well, with the likes of those clubs, and I think it's an added advantage now, is the fact that they have the European resources behind them, but that it was very difficult to get players spread, like to go to maybe a Sligo or a Gaul, wherever, that if they had the opportunity to stay in Dublin or go to a Dublin club, that they would always win out maybe. But I think when you add in the financial clout that they have now on top of that as well, Raf, it just makes it so difficult for the likes of the Sligo Rovers or Galway, that they don't have that investment behind them. And not only the investment behind them, but qualifying for Europe makes such a difference now. And the gap, I fear it could even get bigger, because you have Shamrock Rovers now not only getting to the leagues phase. Shelbourne are in the league phase this year. Both of them have qualified for Europe again. Derry already have the financial backing of Philip Doherty. Now, to be fair, he has put a lot into it, a lot of money, but I also think now with the European money off the back of that as well, like, they're only going to get bigger and stronger. And that's why I think even just the likes of Bohemians and Pats, to keep, that's the point I was making earlier, just to keep tabs on those three ahead of you, that's a big jump. So if it's hard for the likes of Pats and Bows to keep their tabs on them, imagine how hard it is for the likes of Waterford, Galway, Sligo Rovers. It just goes to show the challenge that they have. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see the league table very similar to what we see this year. Again, next year, those clubs kind of being cut in half like that, where you have the big boys at the top and the ones down the bottom, because it's a really, really difficult. And you, on top of that as well, you look at the example of John Russell and Sligo Rovers, the likes of those clubs holding on to their better players compared to the top clubs as well, is very, very difficult, Raf. So it's not like you're in a position, say Sligo Rovers last year, you lose McGinty, Morahan, Ellis, Chapman. If they were able to keep those players, then you'd be saying to yourself, all right, we can hold on to those three, and if we sign another 3 or 4 on top of what we have, all of a sudden we might have a chance of maybe getting to those European positions. You're losing your best players, having to start again. Like, it's a tough ask for those clubs just to try and bridge the gap alone.
I can't see any of them bridging it for next season.
Because not like, it's gone past even, I feel, the Dublin thing. It's the financial clout that they have with the European stuff now, and that's why it's imperative that you get yourself into Europe. Like, and I always look and think, with a 10-team league, you're kind of saying to yourself, like, the chance of getting into Europe, like, you've a great chance, because look at 4th position now, because again, you'd be fancying, because the dominance of Shamrock Rovers, Derry, that they'd win a cup as well. So you're looking at 4 places out of 10 thinking we should be. So that's why I think it's like, whatever about the teams at the bottom, it's a massive blow for the likes of Pats. But I do think, Raf, to answer your question, even next year, I think you're going to see the likes of this kind of divide get even bigger for those clubs kind of lower down.
Yeah, and the gap, of course, between the First Division and the Premier Division
Even
is huge
bigger
as well.
again.
Yeah, and even looking at the First Division final yesterday, Bray Wanderers, they had to work for that. Treaty United, who barely got into the playoffs, gave them a hell of a game. And then obviously there's what their manager, the Bray manager, is referenced as a moment of magic as well, decides it.
Yeah, young Ferguson getting a great goal towards the end. And if you look at it, to be fair, Raf, like, it was Treaty who kind of everybody was focusing on Cove, I suppose, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Then the manager leaves and there's a bit of trouble maybe going on. We're not sure the full story behind the scenes there. But to be fair to Tommy Bard and Treaty to get themselves into it, and it just goes to show a one-off game, anything can happen. And that's why, like, I know we're going to touch on the cup final later in the day. One-off games, you just don't know. Like we spoke here about Drogheda and Bows at the weekend, a wrong refereeing decision, a penalty, someone sent off. Anything can happen in one-off games, like, so it always gives you a chance. So to be fair to Treaty, they pushed them hard, but Bray got over the line. I'm reading this morning, young Billy O'Neill is going to come back from his holiday playing the game as well. That's another added advantage for them. And even to touch on, Richie mentioned it a moment ago, I give Bray a chance. One-off games, I'd always give anyone a chance. Waterford conceding 60 goals, so of course there is a jump definitely, but in a one-off game anything can happen. So it's good for Bray as well. Like, even looking at their lineup, I think they had 6 players under the age of 21. You'd like to think they're building something finally out there. I had a couple of years ago out in Bray, and it was always a good club, kind of hovering in and around the Premier Division stuff. The last few years it hasn't been as good for them, but you'd like to think with young lads coming through like that now, that there's a bit of talent that they can build, and maybe if they were to get into the Premier Division, I know it would be a big ask for them to stay in it, but you'd like to think maybe with more people coming in the gates of the Carlisle grounds, more revenue that to be able to generate a bit
trying to hold on to them players as well, and if they don't make that jump straight away, Raf, people are going to look at the likes of Justin Ferguson, his brother Richie, and be like, you know what, we'll come and handpick them, because are the likes of them 3 players going to say no to a Shelbourne, a Bohemians, a Shamrock Rovers, a St. Pat's if they come calling? They're definitely not. They're not.
Even Drogheda, they're all full time, all those clubs now as well.
That's what I'm saying. So the gulf between the Fourth Division and the Premier Division is massive. Sligo were in a really, really bad position when they played Dundalk, and Dundalk were flying in the Fourth Division when they played them in the Cup, and Sligo were comfortable winners on the day they were. So that's, I look at that and I think the gulf is just way too big between the Premier and the Fourth Division.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dundalk there, of course, your former club, and we spoke about the situation a little bit last week. Obviously, it's a fast-moving thing at the moment. Obviously, they're promoted, but there's that little bit of uncertainty, and they put out a statement last week, and this was in sort of related to Ciarán Kilduff, where there's doubts whether he's going to stay at the club as manager, having done such a brilliant job. And they said on Friday in a statement that they released that Dundalk Football Club shareholders acknowledge the vital role of our supporters, volunteers, sponsors, players and staff at this important juncture for the club. In the best interest of Dundalk FC shareholders, Chris Clinton and John Temple have entered into mediation discussions regarding the club's future and crucially the securing of a Premier Division licence for the 2026 season. The club remains fully committed to its ambitions on and off the pitch and is confident that Ciarán Kilduff is the right person to lead the team into the 2026 Premier Division campaign. Both Chris and John are working together to finalise an agreement that supports Ciarán and strengthens the long-term future of the club. We ask for the continued patience and understanding of our supporters during this period. Further updates will be provided in due course, most likely over the coming week. And then very shortly after that, Richie, then Waterford put out a statement saying that they're not they're not imminently appointing a manager, which is somewhat, they didn't name anybody, but it's not completely unrelated, I'd imagine. But in terms of Kilduff having done such a good job there, former teammate of yours, what are you hearing on the grapevine in terms of whether it's will he, won't he situation? Because I think it's vital probably for them that he stays.
Yeah, to be fair, I heard last night that it's done. He's that they're signing back. I think they're going to announce it sometime this week, which is fantastic for Dundalk Football Club. They're in turmoil, but honestly, if I was Ciarán Kilduff and I had the chance to go to a Waterford, I think I would jump ship. And that sounds terrible, doesn't it? That's terrible coming from a former Dundalk player that absolutely loved the club, loved the people that was up there. Everyone involved in the club is incredible. It's a great football in town, it is. But when I just see the trouble that they're in now, like they need a new pitch, the floodlights, just talk about playing their home games away from Oriel Park, just talk about kick off at 5 o'clock. How are they going to fill Oriel Park on a Friday at 5 o'clock? It's going to be impossible. It's a working town, it is. Everybody's going to be out working. There's no chance that men are going to be able to bring their boys to watch the games and stuff like that. So it's absolutely incredible. But the big disappointment for me, Raf, is I was obviously playing there. We were really, really successful. I went away, played in England for 6 or 7 years, came back, first game of Shamrock Rovers up there, and it was like somebody didn't even put a lick of paint on the walls. I couldn't believe what I was doing. They were after getting
I played there 15
money.
years ago and it was still the same thing, Richie.
I know,
and there's still no lick of paint.
I know, but it's crazy is that, like, and I understand from when you played, even the time frame, a couple of years between us, they didn't have the resources. They didn't. They were a team that just stayed up to a relegation playoff. They did, and then we started to build something. They earned millions and millions from getting into the Europa League, not the Europa League conference, the Europa League. So they would have earned really, really good money. But like that, they've short-term goals that they just want success on the pitch. That doesn't lead to you need a long-term project to do. And for me, everything that they do up there is just a quick fix. What can we do right now just to solve a problem? They need to have a long-term project in place that for the next 10 years is going to be sustainable for Dundalk, because what they're doing at the moment just isn't sustainable.
Yeah, now 10 years ago, actually, it's coincidentally you're winning a cup final for Dundalk, and that shows how like time sort of flies as well. And that brings us to the cup final that's coming up, Shamrock Rovers versus Cork City, live on RT2 and RT Player. I presume you're part of the coverage, Alan, as well. Good stuff. So that's on Sunday. Kickoff is at 3 o'clock, and if you check the TV listings, you'll see the coverage details there. Now, in terms of the two clubs involved, the occasion, we've seen huge attendances over the last few years. I imagine Cork City, given their predicament at the moment, and they're going to be away from the limelight beyond after this cup final, they're going to be bringing a huge crowd, and Shamrock Rovers, of course, will as well, because again, the cup final has been something that's probably been a little bit missing in their repertoire in the last few years.
My favourite day of the year, Raf, I absolutely love the cup final.
Apart from Christmas Day and all that.
No,
kind of stuff.
the cup final. I'd have the cup final ahead of Christmas Day, no problem. It's such a brilliant day because it's our showpiece day, and it's the day we get to show everybody, I suppose, what the league is all about. And as I said, I've been covering the cup finals for the last 10 years as well. I was there when Richie was whipping his top off and showing everyone his muscles.
We'll be taking off now.
But yeah, and back then it was unbelievable because they had the rivalry with Cork, which was phenomenal. But yeah, it's such a brilliant day, and I'm looking forward to this one as much as I've looked forward to them all, Raf. So to have Shamrock Rovers and Cork City, everybody is kind of looking as if it's going to be one-sided, and obviously the league table will tell you that as well in terms of top and bottom. But I do give Cork a slight chance. Like, you look at Shamrock Rovers over the last 8 games, I think towards, now nobody will remember this in 10 years' time, but towards the league ending, if you like, losing 4 out of your last 5, there was a bit of gloss taken off it, I just think, towards the end. They lost the 2 European games as well. So out of their last 8, they've only won 2, which was Kerry in the semi-final that they won emphatically, and the Galway won last week just to get them over the line. So I think if Cork are looking for anything to give them a bit of hope, that's obviously one area that they can point towards, that you're kind of saying to yourself, Shamrock Rovers not in great form. They also have a midweek game against the AEK Athens, so there's a bit of travel involved as well. I know Richie did that as well a few years back, and he came back and played in the cup final. So that's another area where Cork might point towards. Also the fact that this is a big thing in no matter what league you're playing in, or no matter what division or what level of football, when you feel as though you're a major underdog and everybody's disrespecting you and everybody's writing you off, you can feed off that as motivation, Raf, massively. And I think that's what Ciarán did, to be fair, in the semi-final. Everybody thought Pats that it was going to be kind of a stroll in the park, go down to Turner's Cross and win that game. They had beaten them 4-0 in the league game the previous couple of weeks before. But they used that as motivation. And I think as well, if you look at the team that Ciarán had out that night as well, I think if he can get that team on the pitch, that played Evan McLaughlin was outstanding. He's been kind of looking after Maguire since they got officially relegated.
Keating is coming back as well now.
Yeah, he only played 45 minutes in the game. Keating's coming back. Now, whether he'll start, I don't think he will, but maybe an impact off the bench. Greg Bulger as well is back playing regularly last few weeks. His experience on the big day as well. So look, everybody's pointing towards the Shamrock Rovers win because of all the gap, if you like. But I think on a one-off situation, a one-off game, I don't think you should disrespect any opposition. And I give Cork a glimmer of hope. I really do. I give them a chance, because purely for those reasons, Raf. And I think that's what Ciarán will be pointing towards with his players as well.
Yeah, the wide pitch is one thing as well, though, that maybe plays into Shamrock Rovers' favour. So I didn't go out and put the odometer out and go and measure it myself, but it's the Aviva pitch is 106 metres by 68. Tala, which is already a big pitch, 105 by 67. How much of an advantage does that give Shamrock Rovers in terms of trying to stretch the game, especially if Cork try to sit in?
Alan's been very optimistic. He is. I'm so fearful for Cork, honestly,
really?
Going into that game. Genuinely.
That's fair, yeah.
I know they're going to bring a massive crowd. I hope that can help them, because they're going to need all the help they can get. As you said, Raf, the Aviva is a massive pitch. I was only lucky enough to play there once in the cup final against Cork. and I absolutely loved how big the pitch was. I was probably the fittest I ever was at that time, so the big pitch just suited me perfect. It did. But see, Rovers, Cork are going to try and keep it really, really compact, but Rovers always create the overloads outside, they do. And I'm just so fearful that Cork won't be able to handle it. As soon as you have the likes of a Graham Burke, Danny Mandreo, Dylan Watts on the pitch with that creativity, I think Rory Gaffney will start the cup final just purely down to his experience. I watched him in some of the big European games. He's been brilliant as well. So I think Rovers are just going to be way too strong for them on the day. The only thing, like what Alan said, is it's a one-off game, a silly sending off early on, somebody slips, handballs. You never know what can happen, but for me, I'm just really, really fearful of Cork going into this game.
And that's a fair assessment that like everybody knows. And I'm not saying Cork are going to rock up and win, but I just do think
it is a cup final. Like anything,
of course,
yeah.
and those are the things that Ciarán will have to be kind of reiterated to his players, and they'll be fully aware of that, like, and they'll be the messages all week. And if they can, like, the easiest part of the game is being well set up and being defensive. The hardest part is to go and create and score goals. Now that's the part that Shamrock Rovers are good at, we know. But in terms of getting a defensive structure, like you'd expect, as I said, the team sheet I have here in front of me that played against Pats, Rory Feely was brilliant in that semi-final. Also the lad Charlie Lyons to the left side of him, the wing back. So you'd expect them to match up obviously against Shamrock Rovers in terms of wing backs as well. Now obviously Shamrock Rovers will probably play Honohan, Danny Grant on the wings.
Could be out injured.
And
that'd be things like this,
you know, things like this, like if there's a huge player missing already. Now the quality to have someone obviously very good will come in, but he's a massive player. Honan, he's probably, I mentioned Duffy being player of the year. I'd say Honahan's in the mix 100%. For player of the year this year as well. He's been outstanding. So if something like that, to play AK Athens during the week, another couple get injured, you just don't know, Raf. But these are all the things that obviously that Ciarán will have to feed into. Now the worry for them, as Richie said, they haven't won an away match all season in the league, which is a problem. They've only picked up 4 points out of 18 on the road. They've conceded something like 39 goals away from home. So like you're travelling up to Dublin and you're saying to yourself, can we keep a clean sheet? That's your starting point. And straight away you're thinking, well, we haven't been great keeping clean sheets all season. Now we're playing against the best team in the country. So straight away that they're the question marks. But if they can do those things, and it's a big if, I don't think this should be disrespected. That's the big thing.
They can look at Drogheda last season as well. Drogheda were massive underdogs going in against Derry. Derry were obviously Rudy kind of lost his job after the game. That's how much they were favourites for the game, and I think Ciarán can just go to the players and say, look, it's happened before, it can happen again.
And on top, that's a good point Richie says, because on top of that as well, and I felt this was a major problem for Derry last year, the pressure that's on them. When everybody expects you to go out and win, there's pressure on you then, and when things start to go, like they can play it in 15-minute blocks, 15, 30 minutes, you're thinking it's 0-0 here, we're getting, like, the frustration.
That's exactly what they need to do.
You know, so the big thing, don't concede early. Don't give yourself a chance in the game, don't concede early. And all of a sudden, if the clock is ticking 30 minutes, 35 minutes, then you're starting looking, get in a half time 0-0.
They have a player who's been there and done it as well. Seanie Maguire has been in cup finals before. He scored the winning goal in a cup final before. So
and was unbelievable in the semi-final, Richie.
Yeah, he was brilliant. That was vintage Seanie Maguire. It was. Now I've know they've really nursed him over the last couple of weeks and gave him probably just the minutes that he needs to be firing on all cylinders going to the final. But if they can, like as I said, play that in little blocks of the games, keep it really tight, you never know what can happen at the other end, because they have a real threat up there, they do.
And even with Stephen as well, Raf, I think everybody speaks about, like, look, they've won 5 out of 6 league titles, is it? But in terms of a legacy, and of course he's going to be remembered as an unbelievable manager of Shamrock Rovers, but for the dominance that they've had with no real rival, like, let's be honest, there's been no real rival, and that's not their fault. But like, Richie was winning leagues when they had Cork and Dundalk pushing each other toe to toe every year. Like, the battles were unbelievable, and it was a great rival. They haven't really had that. So the pressure on them in terms of, like, I think they should have been winning doubles, and maybe not trebles, but a couple of doubles.
No, we should have.
You know, and that's something that he will want desperately. So all of a sudden, if that's not going to plan on Sunday, you know, there's a bit of added pressure there as well. Now, Stephen's very balanced and measured, and he's quite calm on the line and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just pointing out the things that Cork need to feed into to try and give themselves every chance. And every player has to stand up on the day as well, in terms of.
And they need to get a man sent off for hours.
So Richie's giving them no hope. I'm giving them hope. I am giving them hope.
Yeah, so a lot needs to happen. I suppose one final question on the cup final before we move on to AK Athens. In terms of obviously the box midfield shape has been a huge part of what Shamrock Rovers do. Very few teams have been able to stop them. In that sense, you've played within that box as well. Is there like a kryptonite, or is there a thing where, you know, a particular system that you've come up against that sometimes was more consistently difficult for Shamrock Rovers to sort of get over?
Not really, Raf, to be honest.
There's no chance.
No, not even that. It like when you come up in the European games, it doesn't matter really if you play that box. If you come up against an opposition that are far superior to you, it doesn't really. Formations are great and styles of play are great, but if you have 11 players who's better than the other 11 players, odds are that the better team are going to win. And that's what Shamrock Rovers have done. Stephen Bradley's he's done brilliant. He's went out and he's signed really, really good players every single year. Like, even see, he goes and takes the likes of Josh Honohan off Cork City, who a team that are fighting relegation most years or just getting promoted from the First Division. He goes and takes him, and people are saying, not sure about that. Why did you sign Josh Honohan? They have Roberto Lopez, they have Lee Gray, Stan Cleary, they have all these great defenders. Why are they signing him? And obviously he comes in and
he's better than them all.
Yeah, well, arguably, yeah. And he's an Ireland international now, and that's for me where Stephen Bradley has done such a good job. He goes out and he signs really, really good players. He went out and signed Matt Healy. So he's had the luxury, like as Alan said, he has the budget to go out there and handpick who he thinks is the best players out there. And the same this year. If he decides that at the end of the season he wants to go and takes Bohemian's best player, or he wants to go and take St. Pat's best player, he will probably go and do it, and that's just the reality of football.
It's like Bayern Munich with all their rivals in Germany,
of
sort
course,
of, yeah.
They go and take all Dortmund's players. Yeah.
Another little area as well, what was huge in the semi-final, and Richie touched on Shawnee. Shawnee was so good, and he's unbelievable, even watching him in the Showgrounds last week, at holding the ball up and bringing midfielders into the game. But what they did brilliantly against Pats was he was coming in, linking it, but the runners off him, and the energy with young McLaughlin was brilliant, got a couple of goals. Kit Nelson's energy that night as well, Alex Nolan. So if those boys can stand up and kind of
need to have the courage to do that.
Yeah,
that they're not fearful.
But what they should realise is 100%. Sometimes and Richie the same as midfielders, us, you play with centre forwards and balls are bouncing off them and you're afraid to make the move, and you know it won't stick, and it's gone up to them, and you're kind of saying, so what's the point of me making a run off him? You are guaranteed the ball will stick with Shawnee Maguire 100%, and he's clever enough to bring fellas in, so they can make those runs and gamble. And if they have that energy and play with a fearfulness, as Richie said, on the big day, that's another little area I think that they can feed into, because you'd expect obviously Shamrock Rovers are going to dominate possession, holding on to the ball. Obviously they'll sit in a low block, but then if they can just pounce with the likes of that stuff, where Shawnee will kind of bring lads into the game. Like I'm pointing out little areas where I think Ciarán Ash will be feeding into. Like Richie said, the chances are, and I'm sure they're red hot favourites in terms of the bookmakers. But you can't disrespect any opposition. That's the one thing I would say. For sure. We'll just touch very briefly on the Conference League, because I do want to talk about the under-17s later on. So 2 games on Thursday. Shamrock Rovers are the earlier game away from home against AEK Athens at the OPAP Arena, which is not a happy hunting ground for Irish teams, because we lost there just a couple of years ago against the Greeks. But AEK Athens go into this game having trashed Aberdeen 6-0 last time out, after losing 3-1 to Celje, and we know Celje are a really good team as well. Haven't seen them very, very recently against Rovers in their opener a month ago. One of Greece's big 3, and third in the table at the moment behind PAOK and Olympiakos. Packed full of household names. Like, you look at the names: Luka Jovic, João Mario, Marko Grujic, all sort of well-known sort of names around European football. And they also have the the brother of the ex-Strada United and Athlone Town striker Franz Piero, his brother, who's Francie Piero, which is like, I don't know what's happening there in terms of like his father's Francis Piero.
I don't know what's happening there, but anyway, your thoughts on the Celje game, and I suppose the challenge now that Rovers have against AEK Athens, because AEK Athens at their best, a Big Four team in Greece, they're going to be very hard to stop.
Yeah, we obviously played against PAOK, didn't we? When I was at Rovers, and they were absolutely fantastic. Honestly, they were so good, and not just were they the good players. See the atmosphere in the stadium. We went in, every fan had the top off, swinging them around, and it's very, very intimidating. It is.
You took the top off as well.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, lovely, I can take it off here. But I'm sure AEK Athens, massive club over there. I'm sure they're going to be the exact same. Obviously, they're off the back of a defeat against Celje, 3-1. Celje are a top side. Now I know the manager comes under a bit of scrutiny for the way he speaks, especially to Stephen Bradley, but Celtic are a very, very good team. They beat AEK quite comfortably, so they'll be looking for a reaction from that game. They will. It's going to be a really, really difficult task for Shamrock Rovers going over there, and that's one that I'm a bit fearful of, because like that, are they going to rest players with having a look at the cup final then at the weekend? I'm unsure. I'm sure Stephen has earmarked the first few games in the Europa League conference is going to be really difficult. Do they have a realistic chance of getting points? Probably not. They'll be probably earmarking the last couple of games to get some points. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how he approaches that game, especially with the cup final.
Yeah, and Shelbourne playing Drita, 8 o'clock kickoff at Tallaght Stadium. So Drita are from Kosovo, so they're currently third in the Kosovan League, which is ranked 38 by UEFA compared to the League of Ireland, which is 31st. They won their 4th league title last year. This is their first season in a group stage or league phase, although they've generally done okay in earlier rounds of qualifiers over the last 5 years. They're ranked directly below BK Häcken, who Shells obviously played in their opening game in the UEFA club rankings. So Drita are ranked 183rd, which gives a loose indication of their standing. So far they've had back-to-back draws in the league phase against Finnish side Coops, who are decent, and Cypriot club Omonia again, who will be relatively well known because Neil Lennon was manager there a few years ago as well. And squad is backboned by Kosovan players, but with quite a few African recruits, particularly from Ghana. Very few international caps though within their squad, although slightly more than Shells. So this is a really tricky game, but it's also a must-win for Shells in a sense, given what's happened so far, and particularly what happened in the last game.
Yeah, it's a tricky game, but I think they're all tricky games, but I think it's a winnable game compared to what Shamrock Rovers are facing. Like, obviously they're up against it, but when you look at, I suppose, the games that they've played, Shelbourne, Häcken, horrendous conditions that night in Tallaght.
I know, I was there.
Yeah, it was really bad, wasn't it? But they fought and battled and came out with the draw, hanging on a little bit maybe in the second half, but they could have nicked it themselves. Then obviously the disappointment of conceding late on against Skendika, and Paddy scoring the goal. He was unfortunate, but they've 1 point out of 6. This is a game that certainly to be feeling we could get 3 points on the board here. Now, it won't be easy, as you say. These are the Kosovan champions, but they're third at the moment. Balkany are the ones that really kind of dominate that league in recent times, and they're ahead of them in the league table now as well, as are Pristina. So they have 2 points out of 6 as well. But certainly in terms of, you look at Shamrock Rovers have played Sparta Prague and Celtic, like two really, really very good teams. Sparta Prague a different level altogether, and then you're thinking Celtic will be a bit below that. They probably are below Sparta Prague,
will be,
but they were very, very good. But I certainly think from Shelbourne's point of view, this is a game at home that you're kind of thinking we can really go after. And yeah, they've nothing to lose, whereas obviously Shamrock Rovers are going into the game against AEK where they're probably thinking this is a tough ask, and we've the cup final. Shelbourne now have a free hit at this in terms of this is all they can focus on. And Joey O'Brien, as I said, unbelievable finish to the season. The form team in the domestic league, their last 5 games, 6 games, they're unbeaten. The last 5 they picked up 13 points out of 15 or something. I've big hopes for Shelbourne next year. I really do, off the back of what Joey has done. I think he's done an unbelievable job. I wouldn't be surprised if they win this European game as well.
I think they will.
I think they've a great chance.
I think they concede a lot of goals, they do, and I think like as Alan said, the form that Shelbourne have finished this season, they're going to bounce into this game. Honestly, they're going to really come into this game thinking, right, here we go. We've no game now for a while after this. Let's have a right go at these, because as I said, Shamrock Rovers would have earmarked the last couple of games to get points. This for Shelbourne is they're going to earmark the first couple of games, and this will be a must win for them if they want to have any realistic chance of progressing, and not just that, financially as well. It's going to be very important for them.
Yeah, and now we've got live Champions League this week, just to give that a quick plug here. So Manchester City versus Borussia Dortmund is our live game on Wednesday, on air from 7:30 on RT2 and the RT Player, and obviously we'll have highlights of every game, well, not every game, but of every game on the TV programme, but also we'll have select games on YouTube and also on the RT website too. Also there's a show called United FC, a new one, which is starting on November 13th at 5:30, then weekly on RT2 and the RT Player. It's basically a feel-good football docu-series where culture meets competition, and a new generation of Irish teenagers come together to play the game that connects the entire world. It's a way to connect, express themselves, find where they belong, and discuss where they don't. They're guided by mentor and rugby legend Jordan Conroy and coach Vanessa Ogbono, whose name you might recognise as one of the winners of The Traitors. I don't know if you watched that. I don't know. Yeah, it was a great
very
show.
Good, Raf. Yeah, very
I don't know if you're Traitors or Faithfuls, but I know one thing you definitely are former Ireland under 17s internationals, and this is an exciting week. I know you're part of the coverage of this. So Panama versus Republic of Ireland, kick-off 12:30 p.m. Irish time, live on RT2 and the RT Player this Wednesday. We'll also have the Uzbekistan and Paraguay games live on RTE, so you can check the TV listings for details of those ones. But what I was totting up over the weekend, a piece I did on the website
Excellent piece, Raf. Yeah, very good.
It took a while to put together. You had to tot up the numbers.
Excellent, yeah.
So the number of men's minutes, let's say, that the current under-17 squad have played as a total 13,392 minutes of action, mostly in the League of Ireland, mostly in the First Division. But that must be a little bit of that doesn't tell you what their indication is going to be in terms of their overall development ceiling compared to 17s from other parts of the world. But in terms of in a short-term basis compared to maybe some other nations they might come up against, it could be a little bit of a boost or an advantage.
Yeah, I think absolutely, yeah, because obviously it's men's football, whereas you've all these other young lads obviously playing still underage football, if you like. So the piece that you did, Raf, there's a lot of detail in it, but it's excellent, yeah. Now the only thing I would caveat with that is because I suppose it's the League of Ireland and where we're at in terms of, I suppose, clubs and having to give young fellas an opportunity, the boys are in a really good position for that. So it allows them break into first teams a lot quicker than maybe some of the other bigger European nations, if you like. But again, we have to use that to our advantage. I also think this is a really exciting time for not just this group, but for the tournament as well, because years gone by, if we ever qualified for the likes of these, and I remember Brian Kerr obviously with World Cup under 20 years ago, the European stuff under 16, and we were the year below, but all those players would have been at English clubs at the time, whereas now for the first time you have an Irish team qualifying for a major tournament and a World Cup no less, but all the lads, everybody see,
League of Ireland players,
they all, is it 16 of them play here in the league, so you're not only seeing them in League of Ireland, but you're seeing them in the underage games as well, academy football, with all the talk over the last few weeks about the academy and the investment and stuff. Here you're getting a first hand look at them as well at a major tournament with lads that you're seeing still here at home, training, going to school, doing whatever they're doing with their own families, rather than being at clubs in England. So it almost feels like even there's even a more feel good factor about this. So I'm really looking forward to this draft of some really exciting players. Young Finneran is one I'm really looking forward to. Lots of hopes for him, Rory Finneran, from speaking to people, Uma as well. I spoke to Keith Ward earlier in the season about Vinnie Leonard, and he said he's an unbelievable talent. Like Keith rates this boy highly. So there's some really, really exciting talent, and all on the doorstep, which is brilliant to see. So Colin O'Brien, I know really well. I would have played against Colin, done a great job with the different age groups. I think this is his 5th major tournament already. So it's the first time we've qualified for a World Cup under 17 as well. So there's a novelty factor in that. But I would just kind of a little bit of trepidation towards the opposition, the group that we're in as well. Everybody looks at it, thinks Panama, Uzbekistan, these teams.
Yeah, at that age grade, it doesn't really matter.
No, and Panama as well. If you look at Panama, they're 31st in the world rankings, whereas we're 62nd. Yeah. Like, so they'll be looking at us thinking, oh, sure, they're brutal. You know, so we can't get ahead of ourselves in that regard. People have to be, and we often speak about this around international windows and stuff. But where we are now, it's not like years ago where you're looking at these countries thinking, oh, we'll roll these over. I don't think that's the case at all.
These other nations have invested heavily into their youth structure where we haven't. So straight away, they're at an advantage. I feel like, I'm sure if you go over to Panama, you go over to Uzbekistan, they have incredible facilities for all their underage players, where we don't have it over here. So why in the right mind are we the favourites for any of the games? So I agree with Alan there. We need to be very careful how we're speaking about the opposition going into these games.
Yeah, I was speaking to an old teammate of yours, I think from Shell's, Thomas Morgan, who does a bit of coaching as well. Yeah, obviously he was part of he captained the first Brian Kerr team that went as well. Yeah, and obviously does a lot of youth coaching. He was kind of, he was making the point as well in terms of like the young players getting great chances, that it's brilliant. So that piece is coming out on the website Tuesday. It was good, nice to chat to him. But just going back to something Alan said in regard to that sort of cohesion. So a lot of these young lads, they're playing against each other, or playing in many cases, especially the Shamrock Rovers contingent, playing with each other sort of week in, week out. We've never really had that before, as Alan has kind of said, because lads in previous sort of tournaments at this level are playing over in England, and then they're kind of lobbed together eventually, and then they play the games. That's another sort of a little boost that is there that sometimes other major nations often have, like where you might have a Barcelona core or Bayern Munich core or something like that, where lads know each other. So it's obviously brilliant on that side.
It's an unbelievable occasion first and foremost for them. But see, when I played Ireland underage, it was always my favourite time. I couldn't wait to get home for international duty, and it was because when I was under 15, 16, 17s, I think there were 7 or 8 of us that played for Crumlin United that were in the team. So like as you said, Raf, I was coming home to play with my mates. I always have to be over at Celtic, and like that there's Scottish lads, English lads, there's lads from Spain, Portugal, there's lads from everywhere. But I used to always look at it like, I'm coming home here to play football at the highest level with all my mates. I used to have the likes of Conor Clifford, Gavin Gunning, Aaron Doran, who I went to school with Aaron Doran, primary school, the whole way up. Conor Clifford, me and him are still really good mates now. So when I used to be coming home, I used to be like, oh, I can't wait for this. I'm going out to play against Spain, test myself with my best mates. Like, so I used to be absolutely buzzing for it. And I'm sure this group is going to be no different. You obviously have even the likes of Michael Noonan, Victor Oshin-Vuna going representing Shamrock Rovers. It's an absolutely incredible occasion for the lads. I just hope they go out and enjoy it, because as you know, Alan, sometimes when you're playing football, you're just in the moment and you don't really think of anything else, you don't. So I'm hoping that the lads go over there and really enjoy the experience, because it's incredible for them.
Yeah, and on Thursday, Heimir Hallgrimsson is going to be named in the senior squad for the Portugal and Hungary games that are happening later this month. So that's on Thursday. Evan Ferguson looks set to miss the games after picking up an ankle sprain, as will Sammy Smodix and Will Smallbone as well, who are all injured as well. The Evan Ferguson at international level has actually been has been in good form for Ireland. Obviously scored three goals in his last 4 games. The jury still seems to be out in terms of his position at AS Roma, though.
Yeah, I'm worried, to be honest, about the whole situation around Evan. And I said this, I'm sure, on the podcast with yourselves when the move went through. Everybody was raving about, he's going to Roma. I was a little bit worried, just because I felt he's missed so much football in the last 18 months that this was so crucial, this choice where he went, the next loan, that he had to go to a place. And I know there's no guarantees in football in terms of a manager saying, you'll play every week, but go somewhere where you feel as though I'm going to be kind of like the big fish, the likes of, I don't know, Preston or Bristol City, or somewhere where you feel as though I've a real chance of being the number 9 and playing up front. Going to the likes of Roma, Serie A, like major level in terms of the scrutiny and the pressure that might be on you as well. Hasn't scored a goal. Now the manager is beginning to question things. His fitness as well is obviously he's struggling still. And I know he got the kick last week and then he had to go off, so the ankle injury. But before that, Gasparini was talking about he was only able to complete 1 full session the week before and stuff. So I am a little bit concerned, and I know things obviously we're pinning a lot of hopes on him, and he has scored in the last kind of 3-4 games, but just club level, you have to be playing every week. So I'm worried around the whole thing. And this is something, as I said, it's not like, it's easy to say it now after the event. I was worried at the start going to Roma. It was just such a monster move off the back of playing no football. It
was always going to be that, wasn't it? Whether it was going to be a hit or miss, because I was on the podcast with you and I was very optimistic of it, and I loved the courage that he had to go and be like, do you know what, I can go and be a success over there. So I was all for it. But you need to go and hit the ground running then. You do. AS Roma are not a club that you can go over to and kind of dip in and out, and the fans are very passionate, the manager's very passionate. They come out and like as Alan said, you get scrutinised so much you do over there, and obviously he hasn't hit the heights that he would have liked it when he signed.
Like I watched Roma last night. They played AC Milan.
Yeah, I saw that game.
Yeah, and Dybala missed the penalty, but you're dealing Dybala, Sule, Dofka, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, Pellegrini and Cristante midfield. Like, the manager, obviously huge reputation as well. And maybe it was hard to turn that kind of a move down, but I just felt it'd be a different story if he was going there having kind of maybe done well at West Ham,
scored 20 goals and being like, right,
and had played regularly over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, but he hasn't played any football. So this was so crucial that you go somewhere that, and even if he wasn't scoring in the Championship, but I would have felt you go somewhere, Sheffield United, banging.
He went to a Celtic or something like that. Imagine him going up there and scoring 20, 25 goals. That would have straight away. He would have been a god of a Celtic.
7 or 8 goals, just that he's playing every week, and just chipping in with, like, and obviously you might come to Johnny scoring yesterday, and the difference in confidence, and Johnny bouncing around the pitch yesterday. He was absolutely unbelievable. In the game, and he looks fit and sharp and strong. Confident, and I even watching the game after not just after he scored, but the opening 25 minutes, he looked unbelievable. Johnny, this might be a mad thing to say, but he's going to be named in the squad. He could lead the line now.
Yeah.
I said that a few weeks ago.
He could lead the line now against Portugal and Hungary, and I'd have no qualms about that, because looking at him yesterday, one thing I know about Johnny, and he's a brilliant attitude, and I'm delighted for him. I know his family well. Riverstown and Sligo, give it a mention there, Raf.
Plug, you just did.
And his dad is the nicest man in the world. He was one of my heroes when we were growing up as kids, going to the showgrounds. He'd be flying down the wing, Johnny Kenny, and he was the nicest man in the world as well, a local hero. And to see his son now scoring goals for Celtic, and they're a lovely family as well, it's absolutely brilliant. But I'd have no qualms, because one thing about Johnny, and you see him in the games, and even Shamrock Rovers, and he misses chances, but he never stops getting in. He doesn't. It almost reminds me, people talk about, if you follow golf, Scotty Scheffler, right, to have the mental approach that you miss a putt And some players would be affected and he go on to the next hole and he'd be still thinking about the putt, and then he go on to the next hole and it'd take him 3 or 4 holes to get over. Scotty Scheffler missed a putt, onto the next drive, bang, it's forgotten about. Johnny Kenny missed a chance. 2 minutes later, he's getting into the same position and he might miss it again. In 5 minutes, he'll score that one. And sometimes people may say, oh, well, it takes him 5 or 6 chances to score a goal. But he's always getting in there. Mentally, he's very, very strong, the kid. And to see him scoring yesterday in the goal, and I think Martin O'Neill now has come in at a time where I think he likes a young, hungry player that he can now whether Martin's going to be there long term, but I think he'll look at Johnny Kenny and say, I love this boy's attitude and his hunger 100%. And his desire, and I'm going to help him. So I wouldn't be, and I'd have no qualms about playing him against Portugal or Hungary off the back of what he's done the last couple of games.
Yeah, and a final point before we go, just in regards to Johnny Kenny, because I would peruse I don't think you look at Reddit or anything like that, but I look at some of the Celtic threads and obviously the Irish football thread on that as well, and you do notice sometimes the Celtic fans, particularly with some of the Irish players, I think Ida went through that for Liam Scales also, they can be a little bit hard on them. Johnny Kenny, I think I had seen a little bit of that as well from the Scottish-based fans, but that does take mental strength and to come through that and keep scoring the goals. And obviously he's a mate of yours, so you must have been
I texted him yesterday. I texted him straight after
great
the game.
lad as well,
he's Johnny's a great fella, he is, and like what you said, the mental strength, that's something that he really had to work on, because I remember when he first came to Shamrock Rovers like that, he'd miss a chance, and sometimes his head would go down. But to be fair, the manager, we obviously had our sports psychologist at Shamrock Rovers, and he used to drill it into him. It's no problem if you miss. Just make sure you get into that position again, because the last thing you want to be seeing is to be shying away from the ball or not getting into that situation again because you have a fear of missing. Who cares? That's gone. Let's just focus on what's in front of you now.
And that's a real strength, isn't it, Richie? To have
100%.
In any sport, that's like a snooker, an individual sport as well. You miss a shot, fella will be sitting in the corner, dwelling on it and affecting the next frame and all. To have that, especially in football, just to click back into gear, bang, there I go again.
But see the score against Rangers. He's in the history books now. He'll never buy a point in Glasgow. It was a brilliant header. It was like I said, it was real powerful, strong. He was holding the defender off. I mentioned it a few weeks ago when there was talk of him being called up into your own squad, that I could see him leading the line, and purely because see when you're going away to Hungary or you're playing Portugal at home, where they're the dominant team, they're going to have all the ball. He is that physical presence up. Now, I know he's not the biggest and I know he's probably not the strongest, but the way he uses his body, the speed of him, he's tenacious. He has all the attributes there just to cause a bit of a nightmare for the other centre-halves. And like Alan said, if he did start the game, I'd be all for that, I would.
He has better attributes than Evan in certain areas as well. Yeah. Evan, I'd say, is probably better coming in, linking the game than Johnny. Yeah. But see, anything over the top, Johnny's hounding defenders, harassing him, his work rate, his effort.
Unbelievable.
He'd have major positives over Evan in that regard.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to be in the squad Thursday. Sinclair Armstrong possibly as well, who's been playing reasonably well with Bristol City. But that brings us to a close for this portion of the podcast. Alan and Richie, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Raf. Thank you.
And I'll be joined by Rachel Graham after the break. RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm now joined by Rachel Graham of Shelbourne. And Rachel, you had a very busy weekend at club level, but not in terms of playing, of course, from a different perspective, different vantage point. Yeah,
look, I made my co-commentary debut, I suppose, a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. But, and again, a 0-0 draw, there's not a lot to talk about, but I think the overall game was actually really good. Pat's obviously disappointing on the day, but look, a good game, and yeah, my debut, so hopefully more to come.
Yeah, and obviously there's a bit of news. We're going to get you to pick sort of an 11 of Irish under-23 players, because last week you were kind of talking about Abby Larkin, and it's a player that you feel needs to be nurtured, and I kind of thought in my head there'd be kind of other interesting cases in different positions as well, and an 11 is probably the best way to do it. But before that, the FAI are vying to host the Women's Champions League final at Aviva Stadium in 2029 and have formally submitted an initial expression of interest to UEFA. Lyon, Basel and Cardiff are listed as the other host cities in contention for staging the final in 4 years' time. And if this were to happen, and like when you say 29, sometimes I kind of feel like that's miles away, and then you realise it's only, what is it, we're end of 2025, 4 years away now. And less actually when it comes to the Champions League final. Like, how big a deal would this be if this got over the line and if Dublin were to get it?
Yeah, I think it'd be huge. I think, look, first of all, just as an occasion, like getting to go and see, you know, probably the biggest fixture in club football that there is, and to have it here and see the best players in the world playing, it'd be huge. And obviously, you know, entice people to come watch women's football. And I think it will show that Ireland are kind of, you know, serious about women's football, that we do back it in this country. And look, I think I'd say a lot of parents would bring like young girls to go watch the match, and that might kind of spark a love of the game and thinking, you know, I want to be like them and I want to play here one day. So I think it'd be huge in terms of that. I also think domestically it'd be big, you know, to show that Ireland are back in women's football. You know, it might entice players from abroad to come in. That'll only make our league better, make it more competitive. And, you know, if young girls are going to watch this and then they realise, well, you know, there's some games every week on my doorstep as well. Can I go watch that? Asking their parents to bring them. So as well as, you know, having it as such a big occasion, it'll be brilliant to go and watch it. But I think domestically it could be huge for us as well.
Yeah, now the next Ireland game, after getting through Belgium, of course, there won't be in a big venue. No, it won't be in the Aviva. It's going to be behind closed doors in Spain, in Marbella, on 29th November. So Hungary are the opposition for that. I imagine, just from Carla Ward's point of view, a good way to quietly have a look at a lot of the fringe players more so.
Yeah, and look, that camp was always in the calendar for the team. It was just originally going to be a training camp, but now they have a fixture in, and look, you can train all you want, but I think you need to see players in matches to see what they're about. So I think this is what Carla will be using that for, and the fact that it's behind closed doors makes you think, you know, is she going to give new players a chance? Is she going to play fringe players and give them, you know, exposure to playing at the top level? But look, obviously wasted no time now preparing for next year's Nations League A game. So look, brilliant opportunity, probably I'd say more so for the players that haven't played a whole lot this year. Yeah,
and this is Carla Ward's first year in charge. How would you sum it up in terms of a calendar year so far? Because there's been, obviously it's finished on a very high note in terms of getting past a higher ranked opposition, going back into League A. There were a couple of dips during the Nations League campaign, but ultimately, how do you view it?
Yeah, look, I think overall it's obviously been really successful. The goal was to get us to League A, and that's what we've done. So look, it's probably like any job or any, you know, managerial coming in, you know, there's a bit of a learning period at the start, and that probably proved the case as well. And look, got off to a win in our first game, and look, the conditions that night were really, really tough, so it was up against it. And then obviously had that loss away to Slovenia, which was, you know, 4-0, was, you know, a really unexpected tough defeat for the team. But I think that game in particular was a real learning curve, and Carla actually said it was a reality check. That was her words after the game. So that's exactly what it was. And look, they all put their hands up. They all took the blame, especially Carla. So, you know, there wasn't pointing fingers or referees were terrible. There was none of that. So I think at the start it was probably a bit of a learning curve, but then went on and won the games. Obviously then went on to win Belgium over the 2 legs, which was huge. And not even winning the game, how we played in that Aviva game, you know, that's probably the best I've ever seen Ireland in most recent times anyway. So look, I think at the start probably a bit of a learning curve, but I think since then, you know, the team have really kicked on. They look probably as confident as I've ever seen them, which is, you know, usually thanks to the manager backing the players and stuff. So look, I think overall she's done a really good job. Yeah, and now the draw for the World Cup qualifiers, which is going to be sort of a Nations League format, will be made tomorrow, Tuesday, at noon. It will be live streamed on UEFA.com. And just looking at the pots, obviously Ireland are going to be in pot 4, so they can only get teams from pot 1, 2 and 3. And first pot is sort of like pick your poison, I think, in that sense. France, Germany, Spain, Sweden. And then pot 2 is kind of similar in a certain sense with Netherlands, England, Italy, Norway, again, strong teams. Pot 3, Denmark, Austria, Iceland, Poland. Just looking at it, obviously, as I said, pot 1, you know, there's not much choice there in terms of what you're getting. But Sweden, if you were to get Sweden, Italy, and then maybe Poland, that is there's a little bit of a chink of light there, I suppose. Yeah, they're definitely like doable games. Sweden obviously really tough. I think they're like top 3 in Europe. They were last year anyway, so that'll be a really tough team. Italy obviously had a really good Euros, so I think they'd be good to play against. Look, I don't think they were overly miles better than every other team that were there, but they done really well. I think they showed like a lot of heart, a lot of fight, similar to what we would be. So I think that would be a good game. So look, there's not like, obviously the pot A is someone that you're kind of looking at and saying, look, we'll probably need not a miracle because we went and beat France, but you probably need a lot of things going your way to beat them. But I think the likes of the pots 2s and 3s, it's definitely something that we should be looking at and thinking, you know, we could maybe get a result out of these games. Yeah, but ultimately there's a playoff at the end of it, whatever happens, of course, and it'll be 6 match days between February and June 2026. And this is obviously for qualifying to go to Brazil in 2027 for the World Cup. Now, getting to your 11, so this is the Irish Women's Under 23 11. This is your choice. Let's start with the goalkeeper, and it's somebody who is part of the squad already, the senior squad, but someone you've high hopes about in terms of being one of the successors after Courtney Brosnan. Yeah, I think Katie Keane is in there, and look, obviously she was in the last squad, but we know that's because Courtney Brosnan was injured, so she hasn't really been exposed to international level past the under age of 19. But look, she's definitely someone who has like such a high ceiling, so much potential. She obviously played with us at Shells for a while, and you could see her in training and some of the stuff she was doing, like even her athletic ability, like to be able to spring across the goal, jump up, get stuff that's high in the goal that maybe some keepers might struggle with. So she's someone who's huge potential. Obviously she's only 19 now, Courtney Brosnan's 29, so might be waiting a while to maybe take that number one spot. I do think it will be hers in the future. So she's someone who definitely would benefit from getting kind of, high level international exposure.
Yeah, and then your back four, largely domestic based at the moment anyway.
Yeah, look, Avian Costello, I think she's been excellent for Galway, and look, probably doesn't get a lot of attention because, Galway haven't won the league or won the cup, but she is in the PFAI team of the year and she's been excellent for Galway, and probably someone that you would have seen a lot more if Galway had won the league or won a cup. You would have heard a bit more. And then I think Kaylee Shine for Athlone, she's been excellent, won a double, was really good for that team. One of their young players, a local player, I think she was really good. And then Maria Reynolds, who was obviously in the last squad as a training player, so obviously someone who is on Carla's radar and again who will benefit from this exposure, playing really tough opposition. And then Tara O'Hanlon I have at left back, so obviously we've seen Tara in around squads before, but she's someone who's obviously really struggled with injuries and probably missed a big stage of her development due to injuries, so she's missed out on a lot of kind of international football. So, and obviously Kate McCabe now plays at left back, so she's not going to be around forever either, and we rely really heavily on her. So I think Tara's probably the most natural next replacement for Katie. So I think to get her in and around the team would be brilliant of an international senior kind of setup. Yeah,
and the midfield area, so it's a mix of domestic, also players who've already gone away. There's one person there, obviously we've spoken about a lot, who's a hugely talented player for Wexford, but if we start on the wing first, on the right wing.
Yeah, so I have Leah O'Leary on the left wing, and look, she's someone who was really high potential in our underage setup, lit up the kind of under 19 scene and then went away, and look, hasn't probably played a whole lot since she's gone away. So she's someone again who can really benefit from that exposure to kind of like a high international setup. So I think she'd be really good. See someone again we can't really kind of lose sight of. She's someone who could be a big player for us. And I've Erin McLaughlin down the other side who she was in the last kind of training camp, the last USA games, and look, she didn't feature in the games but was brought in. So she's someone who when she was here she was huge potential, really good, and is obviously over at Glasgow City now. So again, someone that we can't really lose sight of. I think she's loads of potential. So they're the two wingers on the team. Yeah, and then central midfield, obviously somebody you know very well. One of them and the other you've come up against and you've always had high praise for. Yeah, look, Ella Malloy, I think I've spoken about before, I think she's such a special player for us, and she's one of them players that, when you watch her play, she just has this natural ability that you don't coach in a player. It's, she can get out of tight spaces, she knows what's around her, tricks, get by players. Like, that's someone that it just naturally comes to them. So I think she's someone that we really as well need to nurture, the likes of an Abby Larkin, the likes of her. She's a huge talent for us, and she's not someone that you come by very often. So to get the best out of her would be brilliant. And then I've Avian Clancy in there as well, who has been in around the squad as well. And look, she's someone who I think would really benefit because, you see a lot of girls now, they leave school and they go over to play in England, and that's the route to go, and that's fine. But, Avian's here and she's doing her studies. She's in UCD, finishing her degree. So she just hasn't had the opportunity yet to go and put herself in a professional environment, full-time environment. So I think for the likes of her, who is maybe being held back a little bit just because she's, progressing her studies, she's someone who's maybe fallen a little bit behind. But I think for her, it would be a huge opportunity in exposing her. Look, she's obviously training a lot with Shelbourne, playing in their league, which is competitive, but I think she'd be someone who would really kind of benefit from that extra bit of exposure. Yeah, and then the strikers then, one of them we've been talking about a lot, and obviously was the star shower in the cup final there recently. Yeah, look, Kelly Brady, and look, probably speaks for itself. You don't really need to say a whole lot about her. Top goal scorer in our league, and again was in Carla's last training squad, so she is obviously on the radar. And again, it's someone that you just need to kind of give them the exposure. It's hard to just put someone in a competitive senior international game when you haven't seen them before, they haven't been tested before. So she's someone again who just would really benefit from this. Carla would really get a chance to see what she's about, and hopefully make it the next step up, because goal scorers, they are very hard to come by. And then the other one is Emily Whelan, who is over at Glasgow City at the moment, and we've seen her in and out of squads before, but hasn't ever really been a main player for us, or consistently in squads. So she's again someone's probably a bit similar to Kelly Bray, really athletic, really quick, good kind of goal scorer. So she's again someone who, is just kind of in that gap, one of them fringe players who just can't really fully make the senior squad, but is not a million miles off. And look, this isn't to say, a 23s team is just going to magically make everyone, ready for senior international. They're all going to step up, but it's just about giving the players the best opportunity to be able to play senior.
Yeah, for those, for example, let's say an Ellen Malloy or even a Kelly Brady, what do they need to do, or what needs to happen for them to sort of make that next step?
Well, I think this would be a great step for them. Look, obviously Ellen and Kelly are both playing in their league, and sometimes you do need to maybe make a step over to England or, somewhere in Europe to just really be training full time and playing at kind of maybe a better pace. But look, I think for them, they've shown that they definitely have the talent of it. And look, if someone doesn't really want to go to England, might be a bit of a homeboard, this could be, great exposure for them. But look, they're both flying at the moment. They're probably two of the best players in the league here. So if you can do it here while you're playing here and still make the step up to senior, like I don't see the need to go abroad. But look, it might be better for some people who may be struggling on the fitness side of things. But the likes of Kelly, she's flying fit at the moment. So look, I think this would be a huge opportunity just to test themselves against other international quality.
Yeah, no, I had only asked for 11, but you went and did some extra work. So you've filled out a match day squad. So just the other names again, mostly I think bar one there are all obviously domestic games. If you want to just talk us through some of those ones? Yeah,
there's another few, and look, you obviously just can't 11. You need a squad. So look, I've Emma Doherty, Ava Mangan, Katie Lawley, Aoife Kelly, Ellen Dowland, Joy Ralph, Jess Fitzgerald, Kate Thompson. Like, they're all really good players as well, and they'd be the ones that I'd say would make up the rest of the squad. And like Emma Doherty, she's a really good centre forward. She's, loads of pace, loads of athletic ability. So sometimes these players just need the extra challenge to be able to step up and make themselves noticeable for senior international. So look, there's a few other good players there. Ellen Dowland, another good centre forward. Aoife Kelly, really good midfielder who, is finished with her 19s now, and she's in that kind of gap now where this is the players that would really benefit the likes of her. Kate Thompson as well at Galway. Jess Fitzgerald's just gone away to Hart, I think it is. So look, these are all really good players that might just need the extra bit of kind of exposure to that really good competitive international to be able to step up to senior.
Yeah, so we'll see how all those players develop. So good work. I kept you busy over the weekend doing that.
I might get the manager's job.
Yeah, you might well do. You just have to put throw the CV in. But that actually does bring us to an end for this week's podcast. So just as a reminder to people, the Ireland U17s against Panama live on RT2 and the RTÉ Player on Wednesday, and then of course the Men's Cup final on Sunday. So full coverage of both of those games. But Rachel, thanks a mil for coming in, and we'll be back next Monday.